Lois, how do you help people prioritize when everything seems like it's urgent and on fire and every single thing on your list is important?
There's so many different pieces to this. I'm going to talk a little bit about prioritization at home. And there's a great article on the blog about prioritizing work-wise. So I want to kind of take a different lens on it for this one. So I oftentimes think about your vision as an image, right? A vision is something that we can see. And when you take a picture with your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever, now you can do where you have depth of field and certain things are in focus and certain things are kind of blurry in the background. And the things that are in the background, just like my background is blurry here, right? It's not, those are just as important of a part of the composition as the thing that's in focus. That's what makes it a really interesting photo, is that some things are in focus and some things aren't. And so with your vision, sometimes you feel like, oh, in my vision, I talk about my house. Oh, I love walking into my house. And now I could have people over at a moment's notice. Or it feels so good to just be ahead of the curve when it comes to having great food in the fridge so that we can just like grab it and do what we want to do and not feel like, oh, we just have to order a pizza again. And then you might feel like, oh my gosh, so does that mean my house has to be perfect and meal planning has to be perfect and everything has to be perfect? The beauty of a vision is that you can recognize and know that a vision, some parts of our vision are going to kind of float to the foreground when we want them to. And then necessarily other parts are going to we're going to let them be in the depth of field. We're going to make them a little in the background because we need to sort of intentionally deprioritize certain things in order to really prioritize what we want instead of feeling like we have to prioritize everything. Because of course, if you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing. So just to give you an example of this, both of those things that I just mentioned definitely are sort of part of my vision. And this weekend, I knew that I did not have the time to do both. And so I really had to think of the even over concept that we've talked about before, where it really helps you create that filter. What's an opportunity? What's a distraction disguised as an opportunity? What's going to get me closer to my definition of success? What's going to get me farther away? That single filter. And so for me, it was meal prepping, even over the house being clean. And I had to fully release that the house was going to be clean, allow it to be completely disastrous. I mean, it looks like a hurricane went through it, as my mom always used to say about my room. I mean, this has followed me my whole life. And another time, another weekend, another week, that house part can float to the forefront of my vision and the other part can float back. And that's okay. So your vision is fluid and it's not like you measure yourself against every single part of your vision being 100% true 100% of the time. That's not the intention behind it. So because I've released that feeling that that part of my vision had to be lived right alongside the other, I was so freaking proud of myself. I like did, the chicken thighs and the sweet potatoes and the broccoli and got that away. I made homemade freaking wontons, listened to an amazing podcast that while I was doing it, made homemade wonton soup. Like what? And it was like so delightful. And for me, again, that was intentional, but I knew I kind of needed that, therapeutic cooking time. But instead of then it being 11 at night, every dish in the house being dirty and having so much soup that no one was going to like ever eat it in 12,000 years, I really did what I wanted to do. And so I could go to bed literally walking through the laundry on the floor and the dog hair everywhere and be like, this is so great. So when you're thinking about prioritization, again, it comes back to putting so much pressure on yourself and knowing that while all these different pieces of your vision are important to you, it's not only fluid, but it's critical to intentionally deprioritize in order to. And then again, it takes it from being a reactive, oh, I just didn't get to the house and I feel guilty and ashamed and I wish I could have, and this never happens, I never get to it, to yeah, I totally lived in alignment with my intention, like with my intentionality around that I was intentionally focused on this and not intentionally not focused on that. So it becomes a choice that you were making and following through with.
How do you get rid of the fear that you might be making the wrong choice or prioritizing the wrong thing, or that there's something that is the most important thing to do today and you might be putting that off in favor of chicken thighs and broccoli or the laundry?
So one part of this is that so much of the visioning process is about trusting yourself again, pretty much everyone that I work with, there has been, I mean, part of the visioning process is how did you get where you are, right? Before you can even think about where you're headed, you have to understand how you got to where you are. And a lot of times there was, when we look back at their trajectory, there was typically an era, a time when they really trusted themselves, when that just was naturally kind of didn't even think about it, or maybe they had never thought about it, like, oh, I'm really trusting myself during this time period. But when they look back, they recognize they really were in that space. And then things get piled on. And again, we start shitting all over ourselves, comparing ourselves to others. All these things kind of pile on that. And you kind of have to like unlearn those things in order to come back to trusting yourself. And so often, you know, have a visionary who comes in and just says, I just don't know. And I'm always like, oh, you absolutely know. You do. Like when you say, I don't know, what you're really saying is, I know, I just don't want to do the thing that knowing will not make me do, but will, if I admit that I know, admit to myself that I know this thing, if I'm really honest with myself about this thing, then I'm going to have to take an action that maybe I don't want to take, or whatever it might be. And so, you know, there's some resistance, very understandable resistance there. But oh, you like it is in there. Just like your vision is in there, we just have to draw it out. The answer is in there. And so typically when it comes to prioritization, you know what the even over is for you. But it's just kind of allowing yourself, and even kind of like that mentally, like cutting away the noise, or getting, you know, making the fog kind of spread apart, to really just ask myself at the end of the day, like, what's my gut really telling me about this?
We all have an intuition, and giving ourselves the space to hone it and listen to it can help us with clarity. And then after that, yeah, it's overcoming that resistance to do the thing, do the work.
Yes.
So Lois, explain the even over principle.
So I think this principle, and this is actually something I was working with an organizational, a company, and we were doing the vision for their organization. And this is something that the founder, a phrase that he used, and, or maybe it might have been Jill. Anyway, somebody on their team, one of their executives used this phrase, even over. And I had never used that actual turn of phrase before, but it absolutely struck me again about this idea of that filter. What's an opportunity and what's a distraction disguised as an opportunity? And I think what it does, whether it's for ourselves or for our team, is to bring everything back to just that one question. At the end of the day, there's 8 million projects that we're working on, or there's tons of stuff in my life that I'm working on, or all these different things. But at the end of the day, you know, people get decision fatigue. And it's like, if I have to make one more decision, so it's ultimately, there's this principle. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but just go with me here. If you know me, you know that I totally geek out on the lean philosophy, lean principles, and Toyota, the car manufacturer, who's sort of like the, you know, grandfather of lean, the father of lean, talks about this idea that eliminating decision points facilitates continuous flow. Right? That's why Steve Jobs, you know, if everyone talks about, oh, he wore the same thing every day, so he didn't have to decide what he wore, so that he could focus all of his mental energy on all of the amazing innovation that he was doing. Like, that's a thing. And so the even over is essentially you eliminating a decision point for yourself, so that you don't have to keep making that decision over and over and over again. I can't tell you how many companies use so much organizational energy rehashing the same thing over and over and over again, or the same individuals who keep rehashing the same. And it's just because every time that thing comes up, they make a decision about that one thing, but they don't make a decision about the whole principle or the whole situation. And so then they're always making a decision, but they're never eliminating the decision point. And so it just feels like, oh, every time this comes up, I have to like go into this whole thought process. What should I, shouldn't, da, 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 da. And when you are able to create that even over, again, it's that it facilitates continuous flow. Instead of even having to think about it, you just, oh, that's my even over, this even over that, boom. You know, this even over that, okay. And so then it drives your decision making, because then when things come at you, because I absolutely promise that they will, then instead of having to actually really put energy, time, and effort towards any of those things, they just kind of like go up against your filter, and they just like ding off, or they are part, if it's aligns with the even over, great, then they go into your funnel of your whatever, you know. Otherwise they just kind of ding off like little ping pong, or like little what's it called when you're playing the arcade game?
Pinballs.
It's like little pinballs, like ding, 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 but you don't get points. Like they go away. I mean, you get points. You get a lot of points because like they are going away.
Half the board. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially it allows you to then be so much more focused and just use your energy in one direction instead of feeling like I hear so many times, I feel scattered, I feel all over the place, right? I don't know where to start. I don't know what to focus on, if I'm focusing on kind of at the right thing at the right time, or all those questions. When we're able to establish the even over, it's critical. But the other thing is we have to be disciplined around sticking to it, especially if you're sharing that with your team. They're going to model you. If you say this is the even over, and then the next day you're not, quality even over quantity, but then the next day you're obviously going for the quantity over the quality, then they're going to model you. So you really have to be disciplined. Same thing for yourself. If you say, you know, getting the fridge stocked so we're not eating frozen pizzas for the week over laundry, then if your partner comes and says like, hey, what about the laundry? Then it's, you got to be like, hey, I'm not going to do the laundry. If you want to do the laundry, awesome. But like, if not, it's not going to get done, period. And so it ties into boundary setting. It's all these things, but it's the creation. It's really, creation sounds like work and effort. It's not about, oh, I have to go to this hole. I have to like go into a cabin to decide my even over. It's like, let me be real with myself. Let me be really honest. I know the answer to this. What's my even over for today, for this week, for the project, for whatever? The first step is clarifying that. And then the second step is being disciplined to it. Or some people have a negative connotation around that word discipline, but it's protecting that. It's protecting that. And so that you can continue to live through that and allow it to give you that continuous flow. And sometimes you're almost like, this feels too easy. Am I doing something wrong? Like this should be hard. I should feel stressed. That's what I'm used to. That's my like comfort zone. And so it's also allowing yourself to recognize like, no, this is actually how it totally can be.
We will dive in more to that discipline and how to build that muscle over time. Thank you, Lois.
Yes, thank you.